Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and good day. This is Don and
Ray
see it rhymed. Good day and Ray.
on the Identity Human podcast.
Oh, you're doing the subtle, like I'm not sure what kind of voice that is, but you're doing it too. Welcome back, guys.
Your
Energy.
vibe.
Yeah, nice. Good mirroring there. Welcome back, everyone. It's great to have you listening again. And what I realized we haven't done in a while is just a recap of, like, say, the last 3 weeks, like
Of our lives?
of the episodes. So, like, I know we've had some interesting guests. We had Rachel, we had our goal setting bits, and we've had some really good feedback. And it's not like someone's gone, that whole episode was amazing. But what I love is getting messages from lots of different people about, I heard this thing in that episode and that really made a difference. And I'm like, that's exactly what this is for.
See, I'm not even aware of these messages. You're not the best at sharing them with me, so I didn't know we had got any messages.
Sorry. So you're right. I should be sharing them with you. But I feel like we're just so far go that sometimes I'm like, I don't want to bring you down. I want to just keep your momentum
are they
going.
only positive? Are they not positive? What do you mean bring me down?
What are you worried about? No, they are positive. As in bring you off your momentum horse by making you look back and be like, look, yeah, which actually we should do because reflection is good.
Yes.
So just so you know, Ray, while everyone else is listening and as a third party, we've had some good feedback about little bits that have hit at the right, that resonated with at the right time with different people from different walks of lives and with different guests, and it's really helped them. So, by the way, if you are one of those that like has had something resonate with you in the episodes, either message us or put a comment on Spotify, or as in on the Spotify comments. You want me closer?
Yes, you're not in the middle of the screen. You're on the edge of the screen.
I like being on the edge of the screen. So if you put a comment on Spotify or rate it or like it, or message us if you know how to get hold of us.
And not just Spotify, any platform that you're listening to this on, if you are able to leave us a review, amazing. And the feedback really helps.
It does.
Well, when it gets fed back to me.
Sorry.
I'm teasing.
Okay, so tonight's episode or topic was inspired by yours truly, Ray. And she said, I know what we can talk about. Let's talk about personal development and how to. And I was like, that actually is very good, because sometimes we don't know where to start. And sometimes we're in the middle of the journey and we don't realize it. And we need to learn from things that are outside of our opinion or our current beliefs to really keep going forward and making progress.
And I think we can be really harsh or criticize ourselves for not doing enough when it comes to like developing ourselves. Where what we want to kind of really highlight to you in this episode is that personal development doesn't always take the shape or form that you think it does. It doesn't have to be formal and structured, and we're going to delve into that.
Can you delve into that?
Oh, you want to begin?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so what shapes and forms can personal development take? So I suppose what prompted this
Wait, you skipped a step.
Well, we can come back to why it's important. We can feed in.
Okay, because I feel like that's...
You skipped. I was going to feed into that, but you're like, tell us the different types.
Okay.
So we don't have to do it. We've planned out like 5
No, we haven't. This is all ad hoc. What are you talking about?
No, it is better that we plan out. We've planned out like 5
basics,
subtopics around personal development that we want to flesh out. And Don was just getting stuck on the order. But so we're going to talk about why it's important, and maybe we can weave that in. And also the second thing was look at what shapes and forms it can take. And what really prompted this topic idea for me was Don and I are really excited. In a week's time, we are flying to the US of A to do a 3-day conference, which is just purely to work on ourselves, which is, we've never invested that amount of like solid time in like together to just work on ourselves, like uninterrupted, like no laptops, no like technological
and just a hand luggage.
And we just have hand luggage.
That's
so
the
Don's
scariest
stressing
bit.
out.
No, I'm not.
And
well,
we're leaving our 4 kids for the first time, like all 4 of them. We've left 3 before, but not like the 4.
We have to spend like
for
48 hours with especially Clark in the next 24 hours. That's what he needs.
But yeah, so basically we're doing this. And so for a lot of people, they might think, well, I don't have time to pause my life for 3 days or 7 days and go to a conference. I don't have time to book a retreat. And I think that can be a barrier that we put up in our minds, thinking that like you don't have time to do that deep work, but I think there's so much that you can do in your day to day, and that's what we really want to bring in this episode. Yes, what we're doing next week, we're super excited about, and we will feed back in future episodes. But it just got me thinking, like, it's so exciting that we are able to do this, but there's so many smaller layers that I think build into that.
But also, I mean, that doesn't tell the whole story. We did take a little bit of a gamble booking it like 2 months ago. So it wasn't like it's all like
a gamble, yeah.
A gamble as in like we didn't know in 2 months' time what time availability we'd have, what funding we'd have, but we committed to it.
I think we even booked like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah. And so it is one of those things where if you committed, those are the things that you don't necessarily see happening when they're like, oh, look at those two going over to America. Or, yeah, I remember 2 years ago we went to America, and you're like, oh, they're lucky to be able to do that. But actually, those are the kind of steps that you sometimes take when you just are, should we do it? Should we not? You know what? Let's go for it. Let's go for it and see how you rise to the occasion. And I think that's an important point. Obviously, it's got to be calculated within reason. But yeah, I just wanted to bring you onto the side of the riverbank as we were going down.
But I suppose your point there is that it's about just making the time for that growth, whatever you're wanting to achieve in your life, and knowing that you'll make it work. Whereas if you're constantly waiting for the time to appear, it's not going to be there. You need to carve out that time.
Yeah, and this is the most pumped I've been to like write notes. Like my intention in my head is like I'm going there and I'm focusing the whole time. And I don't think I've had that type of commitment for a long time on many things, other than maybe a couple of leadership or personality books that genuinely excite me. But this is one of those where like we're going away, and my intention is like I'm not even talking to Ray. Like you stick to your lane, I'm sticking to mine. I'm taking everything I can get out of it, because it is the commitment.
Huge opportunity, yeah.
And it's a huge opportunity. We're going to meet people, hold nothing back, and let's see what comes out of it.
So this is obviously a big form of like being able to take like 3 days, when you add travel time, 5-6 days to work on ourselves. Most people don't have the time to do that, and we're not going to even necessarily, we would love to do this at least once a year, but even that we don't know if it'll be possible. So how can people begin to weave personal development in their day-to-day life? And the obvious thing that people think about is personal development books. Okay, so yes, you can read a book or listen to a book. So if you're not already listening to books using Audible at 1.25 or 1.5 speed,
1.7 or 2.
Don't forget to adjust a little speedometer, because you can, as long as you're able to absorb the information, it can help you get through books really. Not that the purpose is to get in them quicker, but if you are,
I think for me, I speed it up to focus. Because sometimes if I'm listening to a book at 1 time speed, my mind wanders, and naturally is like you don't give yourself time to wander. So that means that you focus on it. Almost focuses your focus on the book. And a top tip is I was talking to someone today for Audible is don't do it while you're sitting at your desk or where you can look on your phone, where nothing else of yours is engaged.
Yeah, I do it the most when I'm running, doing housework.
In the car.
So
where your hands and feet or brain are engaged in a motor activity, so you can't get distracted. Therefore, you're splitting your time between the doing and the listening. Because I find I cannot focus if I sit down and listen.
Struggle with, though, when I'm listening to an Audible book that I'm like really like, wow, this is meaty and juicy, and we talk about writing notes, is that balance between I'm busy doing, like I'll be physically on the exercise bike listening to a book, and I'm like, I really just need a note and paper so I can make notes of these. Like,
you know, you can do that in an audiobook there.
Almost maybe, yeah.
So I've got a whole lot. I've even got on my to-do list now for like 4 months.
Yeah.
To go back and transcribe my notes that I've made or highlights of points in books I've listened to in the past to put onto paper, because sometimes you don't, and Audible even changed it to a point where you used to have to click add clip and then you had to give a description. Now you can just click a button and it adds that timestamp.
So that you know that's a key point.
So that you don't have to, like, if you're, not that you should be on your phone driving the car, but if you're driving the car and it's there and you've got a good point, you just click a button and it saves that timestamp.
And when you arrive at your destination, you can take 2 minutes to then make the notes. Yeah. Okay, that's great Audible tips, but let's not go too far down that rabbit hole. So far we've spoken about going to conferences or retreats, like in-person events, which is a big commitment, but we'll let you know on the other side of it what our opinions are. I have a feeling that we're going to have lots of positive things to say, but we will be honest about the negatives too. Then there's listening or reading to books. And then, of course, naturally flowing from that, you get podcasts. So interestingly, I thought everyone in the world listened to podcasts, but about 3 or 4 months ago, I started that 75 Hard in business. And Leslie, one of the ladies that hopped onto it from LinkedIn, she was like, she's loving the podcast. She's never like listened to them before. So if you're listening to this podcast, it means by definition that you listen to podcasts. But
well, I actually had this image in my head today that's just on that kind of thing, is when you are experiencing something in life, you automatically think everyone else is. So
yes.
you think about when you want to start a business, this is the classic example that you give about if you want to start a hairdressing business, you go, but everyone's got a hairdressing business.
Yes.
It's not like that. The image I had in my head was you're walking a pathway in a desert and there's nothing out there, right? But as soon as people start to do paid ads or Instagram or social media, that then starts to stop your viewpoint of the rest of the world and only brings it into what you can see right here. But you can't see what's on the other side of that. So if you think of someone walking along a path and they've got these floating plates,
oh yes,
just like it's like Facebook ad, podcast. So you then start to think that your whole world
and that everybody else's
and that everyone else is the same.
Yes.
But realistically, outside of that, it's not. So when you could sit there and be like, for a week could go, oh, identity human, why is no one seeing it? It's because there's a few people that are on their pathway and like really buying into it. But outside of that, no one's ever going to see identity human because there's millions of other pathways with things popping up in front of people.
Okay.
And so what you see in your own world, you have to remember is very unlikely to be the same in anyone else's world. Unless there's a big brand and they can throw money at it and everything like that.
Okay, cool. Good point. So on the personal development shapes and forms, I'm just trying to keep us on track here.
That's why I'm laughing. Cool, bro.
So far, we have mentioned in-person events or like conferences, retreats.
I'm waiting to see
books,
if you mention a key one.
Podcasts. Now, those are like the big ones that you probably have heard most commonly. Okay, Don had some really interesting layers examples that he brought in of how actually personal development isn't just the new information you're absorbing from different sources, workshops or books or events, but you had some really like a different definition of personal development about how it's pushing the boundaries of yourself.
What, in terms of how we challenge? Because at the end of this, we're going to give you a challenge.
Well, no,
is that what you're talking? Because that's what we're talking about.
Talking about how we try to still talk about what are the different shapes and forms that personal development can take.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about how personal development
isn't
just about absorbing more information.
I've got you. Thank you for defining and being specific so I can understand. Right. So what I was talking about is reading a book is great because that adds knowledge.
Yes.
Listen to podcasts is great. It adds knowledge. You hear different experiences. But none of that will replace action. And then we start to say, well, what about what action? Like, oh, am I going to go jump out of an airplane, or do I need to go and run a marathon? It's like, no, just what scares you. And it's what scares you, not what someone else is telling you to do because it scared them, but what scares you. So I gave an example to Ray. It was like, oh, it could be about putting a post out on Instagram. She's like, well, that doesn't challenge you. And I said, well, think about putting a post on that challenges you and posting that one. That's going out your comfort zone, because it doesn't matter what the outside result is. What matters is how you feel in trying to achieve that outside result. So that's why some people can just post loads of nonsense Instagram posts or LinkedIn posts and it doesn't challenge them. But for you or for me or for someone else, that like putting yourself out there can be really scary. And that's a small example of comfort zone thing. So there's different layers and levels and shapes and forms it can take. And the books and the podcasts and all that stuff, that's taking stuff in, but it's not challenging you on an outward, really putting yourself out there for rejection. Because when it's on the inside, you can be self-aware. You can be, well, I put self-aware in inverted commas because you can fool yourself, right? So you can be what's called self-deceived. But the best way to create this awareness is to take action and see what happens. See how you really feel, not how you think you will really feel when doing certain something. So going up and greeting someone, shaking their hand, looking them in the eyes, you could sit there and go, oh, that's easy. But actually going and doing that to a complete stranger in a scenario that you don't know, that's going to challenge you, and only you're going to know how that challenges you. So that's another shape or form that it can take. And another one I was hoping that would come up as a key one here is influencers or people, is who you're surrounding yourself with. And when you're looking for growth and feedback, are you surrounding yourself with people that are telling you what you want to hear? Because if you are, you're not going to grow.
And I think that even that goes to people you see physically and just even people you follow on social media and stuff.
Yeah,
just looking at your social feed, and if there's accounts that are just feeding, you laugh, but it's feeding a negative narrative or feeding a bias or actually making you feel bad about yourself, because it's like there's always this impossible perfectionist standard that they're creating. Whatever it may be, it's about curating your feed too on social media so that you have people that are going to push you in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, is you'll often see someone, because an influencer can create a false sense of reality. Mm-hmm. But actually, sometimes what we need is a version of something that we know is more than what we can currently get, and then we can get curious. Imagine everyone, and this is, I actually do get caught, it slightly eeks or irks me when people put, say, a substandard influencing standard out there. Because they are basically saying, don't worry about self-development, it's all good. But if it was all good, you wouldn't want to be doing it in the first place. You'd already be happy, you wouldn't be looking. And so that's my whole point, is if you want to raise a standard, you've got to be looking at something that's a higher standard than what you've got. Otherwise, you're just confirming the bias that you have of going, this is the best that I can be. And I think that that's nonsense. I think there's always room for growth. You have to be able to, it's not one or the other. So you have to be able to address the growth at the right time, in the right context. So it's not becoming something that's against, it's working against you. It's always got to work for you. But if you're aligning yourself with things that reinforce your biases, reinforce your behaviors, reinforce your standards, you're not going to grow. Because that's the same as surrounding yourself with a friend that just says, you're doing really well. No, that's fine. No, you don't have to. No, you look great. Whereas actually you need a friend that goes, look, I think you look amazing right now, but I also understand that within you, there's something that wants you to move one step closer to that version of you. So I'm going to tell you this to help you with that. But that doesn't mean I don't accept who you are right now. And I think that's the point, is if you're surrounding yourself with those kind of people, they're going to challenge you when you don't want to be challenged. And that's where you grow the most. So my best advice is find someone around you that can tend to say things in a brutally honest way, because they're going to do you more favors than someone that doesn't tell you the brutally honest things because they think that it's better for you not to hear that. Because when you lean into that, when you seek that out, you will receive it. It might hurt, but you will grow. The difference is you've seeked that out. You've asked for it. So it's different to getting feedback from your boss when you don't want feedback from your boss. It's different to getting feedback from your spouse when you haven't asked for it. Because if you haven't asked for it, you haven't invited it in, and it's probably not going to be at the right time. But if you ask for it, you'd be like, look, I've got you here because I want you to challenge me. I'm sitting in front of you and we're going to talk. And if you disagree with me, please tell me, because I can take it. And that's what I'm here for. And if you can find that person, they will help you in your journey of personal development far quicker than anyone else that doesn't challenge any bias you've got. But it's hard, and that's why we don't like doing it, because it challenges our ego, it challenges our biases. As soon as you find yourself getting momentum, someone says, oh, do you really think you're like that? And you're like, I can never make it. Actually, it's what are they trying to tell you? What do they see? And sometimes they're going to be wrong. So if they say, do you really think you're like that? And they might be quite harsh in their tone. You can say, well, what do you see? How do you see it? And just listen to what they have to say, because they might be wrong, but they also might be seeing something that you don't. The point is you want to take that in and assess it for yourself. Because at the end of the day, you have to create a critical thinking ability within your own mind so that you can decipher what serves you and what doesn't, as opposed to thinking that everyone outside you is going to be serving you and their information has to be correct first. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What's wrong? Where's your mind at?
No, I'm just aware that we have a lot of ground to cover.
Oh, right.
We're going
Sorry.
so deep on specific
That's
points.
That's me. Okay, you move us forward.
Okay, this is exactly that river analogy where I'm trying to flow us from
tell everyone what the river analogy is, so that they get to know.
Two very different ways of thinking.
We want them to know us, so they can buy into our different.
So if you're wondering this podcast, and I'm not sure how your brain works, but Don's way, my way of thinking is, we had planned out this podcast and we were starting, if you think about the river, it starts up in the mountains and it ends at the sea. I'm trying to flow us down this journey to end up at the sea. So we go on this journey. So my brain likes to do flowing thoughts and like move along in a structure, whereas Don likes to get off the boat and completely explore a whole area and then get on the boat. And I'm like, come on, can we get back on the boat and carry on this journey?
So as a combination, it's brilliant because you can tell once you get to the end of the journey in Ray's way, you're going to be like, where was the wood that we needed and how are we going to build this thing? And people are going to be like, oh, we're going to go back. I don't really know. Whereas if you did it just my way, it would take so much longer to get to the end that we'd probably die before we get there. So the combination is going, okay, here's wood and there's 2 different types of wood. And do we understand that we can build a boat out of this one and a house out of this one? Okay, I'll get back on. Fine. I know there's like 4 other types. We don't need to talk about it now.
I'm just where we had 5 areas to cover and we haven't even covered off area 1 because of
Well, no,
tangents.
we've covered off area 2 and you skipped area 1.
I meant that, but I meant. Okay.
Okay, so let's go. You move us forward. Keep
Well,
rolling
I'm
the
just
boat.
trying to keep the momentum going. So like, I felt like when we, at the beginning of this episode, a point that I really wanted to get across was to really cover off all the shapes and forms that personal development can take without getting too stuck on any particular one.
How many more are there? Go
Okay.
for it. Okay,
Because I want people to look in their lives for ways that they may be not seeing that they actually helping themselves grow and lean into that. So let's just talk more. Let's just fly through some more, okay? So other ones that I had thought of was like, there's obvious ones like journaling, meditation. I
nearly got off the boat there. Yeah, carry on.
Journaling, meditation. Do you want other examples? And we can
So
delve into some.
even physical activity is going to push
Okay.
you to do so, like
So
taking action.
I think the theme, what I quite liked before you got off the boat a moment ago.
I'm back on.
Okay. Was that I think a really good way for you to identify where are you doing something that's helping you to develop as a person. Is it taking you outside of your comfort zone? And I know you have a model around that, Don, but it's like,
No, I wasn't going to talk about
it's
that.
like
Actually, I was.
journaling, I think, and I was thinking then how could we relate this to journaling? If you're sitting down and you're just writing
Having a great
comfortable
day.
stuff,
Having a great day.
that's not going to really, I'm having a great day. That's not going to develop you as a person. It needs to be pushing you somewhere. So it could be, it may need to be that when you journal, you're journaling about some deep, dark stuff that actually you would be really scared if someone read, because that's going to push out your comfort zone. Alternatively, it could just be the fact that you're committed to journal daily and you've never committed to something in your life before. But whatever it may be, and whatever shape or form that pushing you out your comfort zone takes, it's pushing yourself, it's doing an activity that pushes you out your comfort zone. You're consciously doing that. So it could be ice baths. We
can go into that if you want to.
But it's thing. Are you ready to jump off the boat again?
I want to go swim back to one then.
This point was really just to say, look for anything in your life, and we were giving ideas. How many other examples of?
I would say,
personal development
okay,
actions?
an example could be that thing that you want to stop because you know it doesn't serve you, but you haven't stopped yet because you're thinking about other people and how to affect them. Stop that and see how it makes you feel.
Okay.
Or wear an earring if you've never tried to wear an earring before. Because I've got one and it challenges people.
And it challenges you. Your
it challenges, yeah,
thoughts
100%. The reason I keep it in is because it challenges me. Because I constantly I like to fit in, and I'm good at doing that. But if you wear something like an earring, it stands out in the wrong crowd, and it's an easy way not to be able to adapt. So I know that, like, say, my mom has to bite her tongue because she's like, if I was in the house and you came in and I would tell you that you don't bring that in the house, that's the thing. But we had the conversation about it, and it was very entertaining for another time. But now
are you trying not to get off the boat?
I've kept it in now for like 4 months, and I actually quite enjoy it because it's not about creating a rise in people. It's about seeing how it challenges me. So if I go to a client, does the level of the seniority of that person affect how much I think about the earring? Does the level of the size of the company and the potential work that could come from it make me go, oh, take the earring out?
And you have thought about that.
Yeah, of course I have. But I've kept it in because I need to have some physical way of saying, be yourself, be comfortably yourself, be authentic yourself, because that's a big message about what we're trying to do. And it is funny, the only times I ever think about taking it out is where there's a big client a potentially big client that has a potentially big piece of work that I go, how do I need to fit into them? And as soon as I do that, I go, I'm doing this wrong. If they don't get me in because I've got an earring, they are wrong. We are the wrong fit. And the whole point of life, whether it's personal or business, is find your people. Whether they are your personal. Oh, sorry, I'm doing it again. Okay, go.
Stick with personal
Okay, go.
development. Yeah, okay.
But that was part of it. It was a good message.
And everything you said
I
is
know.
on track, but you're going
Okay, so
down
why?
tangent.
Let's go back to
so
why.
I want to talk why it's
No, I want to
important.
talk why.
So basically,
So
what
you
we've
talk why.
hopefully done so far, I'm just going to tee you up here so that I can guide you to where we're trying to go. What we've hopefully given you a taste of so far is just kind of got your juices flowing, your mindset flowing about where in your life are you currently maybe doing something that actually is personal development that you hadn't thought was. And or maybe you're not doing something that you mentioned and you kind of we picked your piqued is that the word? Piqued your interest. Yeah, piqued your interest in terms of saying that you haven't tried that you might be interested in trying. But identify and don't overwhelm yourself. Identify one or two things that you can do and really focus on doing in a conscious way. And so why is this important? Why should people be listening to us and looking for these? Why is it important to actively and consciously and consistently be working on developing ourselves?
Why is it important? Well, it's not. No, as in realistically, as you are now and you see people that can live their whole lives not wanting to self-develop and they are happy, but what are they unaware of? What have they missed out on? And what have they done to those around them by blacking out their personal development, their self-awareness? That's sometimes a question, number one. Question two, and this is actually proving why it's important, is when you get to a certain level of awareness, say you're 60 and you've gone through all these experiences and it comes by mistake, how often do they do, this is your classic example, is they've done a business, they run a business and they get to 60 and they go, I have all these regrets. And all those regrets are with a lack of personal development into becoming self-aware that what you really wanted was not what you're doing.
A big theme is that is when you see it, when they have those phrases or comments from people who are in old age homes or on their deathbed, what they say, a big theme, it can be tied back to that they weren't self-aware at that point in time that wasn't serving their purpose. And so if they'd maybe done more self-development at that point, they would have identified.
And your biggest one is always the example with kids, is if you don't personal develop and you get stuck on, I want to run this business, you don't think about kids because you're running the business.
You don't sit down and think what's important to you.
And so that's where you have to constantly be develop out of your ego, develop out of your ambition to balance it and take it at the right pace. And we do that. There's times where one of us streaks ahead and the other goes, whoa, what's important to us now? And it's making sure that the time we spend with the kids can never be, you can't buy this. The kids are only young once. But then also sometimes we go, okay, we need to just push it forward a little bit. But that's the choice that we make. It's the intention that we have by being self-aware, by developing and okay, how can I grow the business and still spend time with the kids? Well, I'm not going to spend more time in the business. I'm going to be more efficient. Okay, well, damn, how am I going to have to do that? Well, we're going to have to increase communication. We have to increase how smart I am, how strategic I think. And all of that requires you to level up.
So you made a really interesting point there on ego and stepping out of your ego so that you can almost have that, I don't want to say vision, but have that viewpoint that you can actually see what's happening in life. So that for me feeds into the next point that I want to discuss. I'm at point 3 here, but it's around mistakes that people make when it comes to personal development. And I think it's really important when we talk about ego, I would love to explore that more around and the 3 levels.
So
let's tie that
firstly, I would say ego has to sit at a neutral.
So what do you mean by ego? Let's just take one step back.
So ego is the thing that'll blind you.
Okay, more.
But it's also the thing that pushes you. So an ego is something that when you're getting feedback, and we'll talk about, we do mental toughness, right? As Samson Harmon does mental toughness, and I get someone that's on the mentally sensitive side, and I say to them, rate your mental toughness before I show you the results. And they got a whole set of 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, and they rate themselves 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. It's because their ego blinds them to the fact that they might not be as they say they are. And this is where ego really plays it, once I show them They go, yeah, I don't think that's right. They don't think about the fact that questionnaire, that company that's developed this questionnaire has spent decades and gotten like sick, and you know how it is with scientists. They've gotten independent scientists to like scrutinize everything they do so that it's as accurate as possible. So that, yes, it may not be a 2 out of 10, it may be a 3 out of 10, but it's certainly not going to be a gap of 7.
Yeah.
Like they put that, but the person that's sitting there will go, yeah, I think that's wrong.
I have a question on ego.
Yeah.
The way you describe it is that someone being overconfident. But I think
No,
ego
blind.
can exist.
I think blind.
But the way you described it with that survey, like giving themselves a 10 out of 10, I think ego can exist for people who are not over cocky or overconfident. It can exist for people who maybe, you know what I mean? Those people who aren't those big loud voices, it can exist in their lives too. So what's another way that someone will identify ego presenting itself?
So ego presenting itself is if someone tells you something and you immediately think that they're wrong.
Okay.
Because you're not recognizing that there's a different truth to the one that you've got.
Like you're not even willing to listen to someone else's
and
opinion.
Why I said it's a neutral is if you are determined to achieve something, you need ego. Because ego is going to make you keep going when everyone else is telling you to stop because they don't believe in your way. They think it's too hard because they wouldn't be able to do it. Whereas your ego is like, it's not too hard, I'm going to do this. So you need that to achieve. But you need to, like you said, be able to step outside of your ego and assess, is this the right thing? And you swing that pendulum to the positive, or is this the wrong thing? Is it leading me down the wrong path? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that contextualize it a little bit better?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to identify ego because we think we can, but it sits at a deeper level. And this is where self-awareness, self-actualize really becomes important. It's like you can only, I think, identify ego when you get someone that challenges you in a way that you completely disagree and you allow yourself to go, yeah, okay, they might actually be right. I'm going to listen to this a bit more. We're going to explore this conversation and I'm going to put myself out there. But that's really hard because you're essentially asking that everything that you believe in about how you see yourself and what you do, you are willing to say, I'm going to leave that to one side right now and go, I'll listen to what you have to say. And actually a weak ego might not serve you well, because if you constantly listen to what other people are saying and not trust in yourself, that doesn't serve you well either. And this is why I always say, like, everything's like a pendulum swing and you've got to decide where it sits on the extreme positive, on the extreme negative, and what's that midpoint that serves you well. So
okay. So what we really want to delve into now is like, I don't think we've touched on it already, is mistakes that people make when they are on their personal development journey. And so, like, I think the concept that the self-deceived, self-actualized, and self-transcended really comes into play because one part of personal development is really understanding your personality, and Don does loads of work around this, like personality and what actually drives you, what gives you energy. You might have heard us talking on previous episodes about the chimps, like the different chimps you have, or what I don't know what's the better way, like your personality. It's like your personality. What's your gift? What gift do you have to give to the world in terms of the personality type or your special, unique characteristic? But with every yin, there's a yang. So there's also parts of your personality that have negative aspects to them. And so part of your personal development journey is being really aware of the different traits of your personality. And I think within that, a mistake people make that we've learned about is that often the starting point that people sit at is what we call self-deceived, where they think they have a certain personality trait or characteristic, but actually that's totally not even their characteristic. So what's like an example?
Well,
choose one example.
The perfect example is you do our I3.
Yes.
And you go, that's wrong.
Okay, but give me a specific, let's use a specific personality example just to pick on. Like one way that someone thinks I have this personality type when actually they don't. What type of personality type would it be?
Let's put inquiring there. So like, okay, this is the one.
Describe inquiring.
Inquiring is almost like your gift is to teach, and that not like teach as a lecture, but it's imparting knowledge, so helping others, but helping others through knowledge, through fact, through figures.
So let's take someone who thinks they can't teach.
No,
natural, or you want to think the other way around?
No, because when you tell a high inquirer, they go, oh yeah, I do like my research, I do like this, I do. But then you go, oh, and by the way, the awareness points that come with this are stubborn, very unemotionally aware, not unemotionally aware, sorry, but very much facts and figures driven, so therefore are not moved by emotion. Like, we can't convince you emotionally that what you're saying is wrong. And when you speak, you don't realize how you're upsetting others because you see things as an analytical, black and white point of view. And that person will then accept, oh yeah, I am all those things. No, but I understand people.
So they self-deceive. So they think when they're making a decision and they've used complete logic to come to the conclusion that anyone who's emotive about the outcome is
just erratic. It's just too emotional. Yeah.
And that's them being self-deceived. That is actually one of the, not weaknesses, what's the word you use? Awarenesses of their personality traits. Yeah. So it's looking, you may, where might you be self-deceived, but the funny thing is
you won't know.
You won't know.
It's horrible.
Unless you do
It's so horrible.
Unless you truly, in a raw way, look at the feedback people are giving you or journal on things to identify.
Also, and I think this is where personality traits and assessments and facilitators, I genuinely think there has to be a higher standard than what there currently is, even within the stuff I've gone through. You can literally turn someone's life upside down, especially if they're open to it. The people that aren't open to it just brush it off and carry on.
But those
carry on
being
self-deceived. If you're genuinely open, like I've gone through a bit of that myself. And I've seen other people go through, and I've seen other people make other people believe in the wrong things. And it shouldn't be like that. For like some of the training that you have to do is literally watch videos and maybe attend a day or two live, and then you've passed.
Yeah.
And then it's go and practice.
And then you can have this impact on people's lives.
And you can have this impact on people's lives. And if you're self-deceived, and if I genuinely think it's a certain personality type should be able to facilitate that kind of thing, because I think there's some that they will do it in a special way, but it has to be monitored.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great point. But let's just talking about people who are trying to identify their own personalities. So if they start out self-deceived, the goal is to work through the ladder. You might be able to jump, but the next step would be to become self-actualized.
But I think you're missing one point. I'd just like to jump back onto the shoreline quickly.
Yeah.
Self-deceived isn't I've noticed that and I'm no longer self-deceived. I think that each one of these has 10 levels. Because even once you jump through the first level of like self-deceit to yourself, you're like, oh, flip, I didn't notice that. There's still something else you're not going to know. Because
it's constantly
every step is you're going to be blind to something.
And on the point you're making on self-deceit, where if someone gives you information, like say you're doing a personality profiling and they give you information about yourself that you're like, oh my goodness, that's an awareness. I had no idea. I think it's important to never take one source as the ultimate source. Whether you go and seek out alternative sources or whether you just journal on it and work from your gut and say, does this feel true to me? And what you can look for, but it is just important. Yes, in the self-development journey, get input from other sources or other people, but make sure it's balanced.
My next top tip is what I say to everyone. Look, with any information you get about yourself, look at the patterns it's describing, not the one-offs. So when you disagree or agree, because you're going to agree to things that aren't you either, because that's self-deceit too. Like, oh, I am that energetic, open, bubbly person, because you think of that one instance where you are. The best thing you can do is look at your patterns over a year or 2 or 3. And you can do that by asking your mom or your dad or someone that's known you for a long time. And you'd be like, what do you see my patterns according to these traits? Instead of looking at a one-off. And I think that's everything in life. We get so super focused on one-offs, we can deceive ourselves. And that's why you can start to eat bad food and think, no, you haven't eaten that badly. Anyway, I'm jumping.
And I think another point on self-deceived that we can say, like to identify maybe if you are self-deceived, is if, and this was a point we had spoken about covering off on this episode, is that if you are doing loads of personal development, but everything that you're listening to or reading, you're going like, oh, yes, I agree. I know that. I know. And you're telling yourself, I know, and you agree. I agree.
I have done work on myself. And I do see this.
You like totally are going, yes, I agree with that. That's a great point. Yes. If you are just agreeing and just like telling yourself, I know that, I get that, to everything that you hear, you probably are only looking at information and looking at sources that are reaffirming stuff that you believe about yourself. You should try and lean into that information that maybe feels a bit uncomfortable, that challenges your current beliefs, because that's how you can truly look at moving out of that self-deceived space when it comes to understanding yourself.
And then into self-actualized.
So you want to move to self-actualized.
Let's say we're in that now, is you're now going, I do see that, I am that.
And and then
someone points out the awarenesses. No, but even then, is, oh, I am aware that I'm that. But the one thing that you do recognize is you keep getting stuck in that cycle. So you're self-actualized because you're aware of it, but you can't move away from it.
Isn't that the definition of self-actualized? Because the next level, the third and final level, is self-transcended, where you're aware of your patterns or whatever you have, but you're able to avoid those. So for me, self-actualized is that loop that you're stuck in. You're aware of your work-ons, but you keep repeating them. You're not able to stop yourself. That's self-actualized.
And when someone's telling you that those are your patterns, you go, yeah, I know, but I know them already.
So that's self-actualized. And then it's self-transcended is when you're able to say, well, actually, if we use the Inquirer example where they make these decisions without emotions, a self-transcended person will be able to look at a decision that they need to make and actually force themselves to look at an emotional side so that other people can be included in that
decision. I think the biggest one for the inquirers is to not just think that they've looked at the decision from the other point of view, but to recognize that they are going to actually have to listen. So you can think you're listening, but you're not listening. And they have to be able to have the thought process to go like, okay, I know I'm right, but actually, wait, I think I'm right. And I've seen from their point of view, but I'm genuinely going to let my guard down and listen here. Because that trait happens to build itself up by what it knows. So in order for it to stop believing wholeheartedly in what it knows, it's going to have to essentially break everything apart momentarily and let new information in. And that's self-transcended. It's like being okay with both sides and listening and genuinely.
Yeah, it's not writing off yourself completely and making yourself miserable to always work to avoid your awarenesses, but it's getting a more balanced.
Although if we want to talk about self-confidence, it's being able to go, oh, break me apart, I won't change.
Yeah.
And you eventually will be unbreakable or unshakable in who you are, because it's not a belief, it's a faith. Does that make sense? So like it is like, oh, I'm aware. You can, if you are right, then it's going to add to I am. If you're wrong, nothing's going to change, but let's have the conversation. I think that's a lovely place to be, and we all got to strive to be there.
I know. So I think knowing those three levels can be really useful, a little tool to have in your tool belt to help you to avoid mistakes. Like you don't want to get stuck in that self-deceived space because you're just fooling yourself that you don't have these awarenesses, but you also don't want to get stuck forever in that. It's great if you can transcend to if you can move up to actualization, because you're becoming more aware, but you also don't want to be stuck there forever because you're not doing anything about it. And so the ultimate goal is to become self-transcended. And it's just a really useful kind of visual to have about what you're trying to do when you're working on yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on the boat.
You're on the boat. Okay, yeah, but that was mistakes we make. Any other mistakes that you want to highlight that you see people making when they go?
No, it sums up in those. Like I see people make mistakes that like they either are reading loads of books, not taking action, or they're taking action and thinking they don't need to read any books. It's not one or the other. It's both. Because if you don't know what you don't know. So by reading books, you learn new stuff. But you also can't just learn new stuff. So you have to balance out by taking action, learning. So it's action, reflect. So perform, rest. And so I always say like, just be careful of the person that says reading books is not going to help you. Because of course it is. Because otherwise how are you going to learn new ideas? All that does is just speeds up the stuff that you're going to see and allow you to reflect on a different level when you take actions and go, oh, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, otherwise, you can just take action and get stuck in the same cycle. There's a definite
balance between, like, I often see people who just read so many business books and don't take action. There's a fine balance between the two.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we want to end off on a little challenge from us if you've made it this far in the episode. So now that you've listened to all of this, it can feel quite overwhelming with kind of, where do I start now? There's so much I can do. So Don, do you want to take it away?
What comes to mind when I say to you, what scares you about someone finding out about you? And so this is for listeners. So like, if it's, or what do you think other people won't accept about you or your character? Whatever that answer is, take action on showing someone that. That's going to be your ultimate challenge. So whether that's putting yourself out on social media, whether that's chatting to a friend about how you feel, or if it's being honest about, I really feel like this is frustrating me at the moment, and talking to someone that you think will be awkward with, that's going to challenge you.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I've been
yeah.
working a lot on different areas myself, and it feels extremely uncomfortable, but it's leaning into that discomfort because you know at the end of the day that it's something that you need to work on. And there may be layers, years of history behind why you act a certain way or why you do a certain thing that you're going to have to work on and peel away and actually clear off so that you can become who you truly meant to be,
Yeah.
so that you can live to, so that you can feel like you're always just in flow and in a good energy state, and you're not doing these things that make you feel horrible inside. And that takes discomfort. Now that takes, it's hard, but I don't want that to put you off. When I say it's hard, while you're doing this, and then you go, okay, I'm taking up the challenge, but actually this feels really horrible and it feels hard. I'm going to stop. I just want to prepare you that it's not going to feel good the whole time, but that on the other side of discomfort is a great transformation.
So if you want to have a bit more of an easy action point, I want you to pick a friend that you think will tell you the truth and go and ask them for feedback. You go and just, if you think that they can be candid enough with you, go and pick them and say, what do you really think of me? What do you think the things are that I don't see? And see what they say. And if they don't tell you anything that scares you or that you disagree with, you've asked the wrong person. Go and ask someone else. And until you do that, like that's, if you don't, the resistance you feel will be your ego going, no, we don't need to. No, it's fine. That's fine. Lean into that.
I mean, a softer way, I'm just thinking of something to ask someone that is just
don't
say,
give them the out.
I am really trying to work on myself, and go to someone who knows you well and who you know maybe does self-development themselves, and just say, are you aware of any recent books or podcast episodes that I could listen to that would really help me? And they may lead you towards say that they think, well, I know that you really struggle with consistency or eating healthy, or saying they may lead you towards something that you're like, okay, this is an area that I can work on. Does that make sense? Or is that too soft?
I'm open to your suggestion because it's not just my way. But yeah, I think it's, there's no right. You have to just start somewhere, and you'll find your way.
And it's about embracing this journey. And because the other kind of small thing that we just wanted to recommend to do is just carve out. We spoke at the beginning of this episode about Don and I taking like 3 days out, which is a big commitment. But this can just be saying that it's just that 10 minutes a day, and the cumulative impact over time will be massive. So what can you do for 10 minutes today, whether it's just listening to a podcast episode or a book or journaling, but really challenging yourself during that journaling, and just commit to doing that daily.
I like it. Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. We're going to bring an abrupt halt to the episode. So remember, I'll work on me for you if you work on you for me, because Ubuntu, we are who we are through others. Thank you very much for listening, and you'll hear us and see us in next episode. Thanks very much. Have a great week.